Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second segment in our volunteer training for Streamwatch. My name is Galen Hecht, and I am the Lower River Coordinator. I work at Kenai Watershed Forum. I've met some of you, and I really look forward to meeting the rest of you out on the river in the upcoming season. In this session, I'm going to talk about the program history and the purpose of Streamwatch. So we'll get a little bit more into the background of the program and why we do what we do. Let's get started. All right, so Streamwatch is a volunteer-driven program that assists land managers with peer-to-peer education and stewardship at high-use fishing sites on the Kenai Peninsula. You already heard a little bit about education and stewardship in the last slide, so I'm not going to talk a lot about it. But what I do want to talk about is what this looks like on the river. The rivers of the Kenai Peninsula experience an extraordinary amount of angling, which is a great thing. But as with any good thing, so much of it can have some impacts. And in this case, there are pressures from angling that can impact the river. Things like trampling riverside vegetation, a lot of fishing line being snagged in the river. Occasionally litter gets into the river and into salmon habitat, and that can endanger fish. So with Streamwatch, we work to alleviate some of those pressures. And so I'll just draw your eyes to a couple things in this image. You know, there's some fencing here along the riverbank vegetation to try to protect that vegetation. Here and here are what we call monotubes, which are used for fishing line recycling. And you can't really see it well, but this yellow thing is a sign asking people to respect the temporary habitat fencing to try to let that vegetation establish itself and keep the river healthy. I'm going to talk more about all these things throughout the presentation. This is kind of fun. This is the original Streamwatch logo. And this program started in 1994, so it's been around over 25 years. In the first place, it was started by a group of concerned citizens, active citizens like yourselves, who were striving to protect the river and to protect the salmon habitat that makes the Kenai Peninsula so special. So as thousands of visitors flock to the river every year to fish, view wildlife, and so on, these volunteers were out there trying to urge people to fish in a respectful, ethical way, to keep the riverside plants in good health, to protect salmon habitat, and do so much more to really steward these places, to really take care of them, and also inspire others to action. You know, it's kind of contagious when you see somebody doing something awesome like collecting fishing line for recycling or picking up trash by the river. It has a bit of a domino effect. So, you know, this is a group photo from 2009, and many of the original volunteers are in this photo. People have been with the program for a long time and just are really loyal and dedicated to this cause of keeping the rivers of the Kenai Peninsula healthy. Not to mention, it's just fun. You know, you go out on the river with friends and you do a Streamwatch patrol, you walk up and down the stream, taking care of the place. You can feel really good about that, meeting people, and just being in these wonderful places. So it's a great program, and we love it when people come back. So we hope you'll stay with us for a long time. Okay, now into the heart of what Streamwatch does. So we really are all about banking on the river. We're about establishing healthy riverbanks, which are an investment in the future of these rivers and in the future of salmon. I'm going to talk about why. You can look at this photo and see a few things that are very evident right away. You know, there's people fishing. That's awesome. They are fishing from the river bank, standing on the bank, which is something that we tend to not like as much because it leads to vegetative trampling. And when you look at this photo, there's really almost no vegetation left in the area that's highlighted in this next slide. So you can see that in this zone, circled in red, the riverbank vegetation is basically gone. If it was, undisturbed, that area would be overgrown with plants hanging out over the river and providing what we call cover, which is, it shades the river, it keeps it cool. It also provides protection, literally cover for small fish. And it also holds sediment to the riverbank so that it doesn't flow out into the river and cause the river to get filled with sediment, which we refer to as turbidity. We want to see clean and cold water. Here's another image that just shows, this is from the 90s as well, it just shows how when people are walking to the river directly over the riverbank, the situation can degrade pretty quickly, and the river will start to move over those banks, expand, widen, get shallower and warmer, and also more turbid, dirtier. Here's another shot. This guy's just trying to go fishing, and he has to walk through this, 8-inch deep mud to get there. So in addition to not being great for the health of the river and habitat, it's not great for visitors if you have to walk through a mud pit and get, all slicked up with this riverbank mud. It's not ideal in a lot of ways. We want easy river access for people that doesn't harm the habitat, that can help everyone have a good day. Here's just one more image, a little closer to water level, that just shows how trampling over time can really lead to riverbank degradation. And why is this important? Because baby fish, little salmon and trout, they love that area of the river close to the riverbank. This is not just a claim that I'm throwing out there. This is well backed up by science. This is from the ADF&G Summary Report on Kenai River Juvenile Chinook Salmon. And if you just read what's highlighted here, it shows how important that riverbank habitat is. The highest numbers of juvenile Chinook salmon were caught in areas with moderate water velocities, especially along irregular shorelines or below islands, near cover, flooded vegetation or sandbars, and water-permeable log jams also made good habitat. So the point here, in plain English, is that small fish really like slower moving water by the shore, near cover, like those riverside plants, or where there's complex river features like logs in the water or other things that will provide protection for the fish from predators, slower moving water, and it also helps them access food. And what happens when you have happy little fish is those fish will grow up, run out to sea, and they'll become big fish. Like this one here, they'll come back to their home spawning grounds, and they'll bring marine-derived nutrients, they'll feed us as Alaskans, they'll feed wildlife, help support the forest, everything good. Everything that we love about salmon is made possible because baby salmon have a good home. You wouldn't pump a bunch of polluted air into your toddler's bedroom, and likewise, you want to keep baby salmon's home, that near shore, near bank habitat, really clean, really healthy for them. We want to provide salmon a great home on the Kenai Peninsula so that they keep coming back and we can keep enjoying the opportunities that they provide. All right, so how do we do that? Streamwatch volunteers are really good at doing restoration and stewardship projects at these high-use fishing sites. So I'm going to give you some examples. So here's a couple volunteers putting up signage that is asking people not to tread on the vegetation on either side of this boardwalk. First of all, awesome boardwalk. You can see that thing is solid, it's got a handrail, and the vegetation is doing great on either side of the boardwalk. That's what we want to see. So we encourage people to use the boardwalks, and then through signage and talking to people and by our own example, we encourage people not to tread elsewhere. We want them to use designated river access, stairs if they're accessible, and not to walk off of these boardwalks. So one example of stewardship in action. Another thing that we do is we put up temporary habitat fencing along 2 to 3 miles of riverbank every season. And, this gentleman having a great time putting up the habitat fencing. And you can see that vegetation is just thriving. It's doing great. It's awesome for the river behind him. And, this stuff, we put up kind of flimsy habitat fencing on purpose because if a bear or a moose or other wildlife is trying to get to the river, they can get through this stuff. We'll go back and maintain it, fix the fencing. We take it out at the end of the season. But while it's there during the peak fishing season, it protects this near bank habitat really well. And the results are pretty striking. Here's an angler. She's making her cast. The water around her is beautiful, clean, and cold. And right behind her is this awesome riverbank vegetation being protected by habitat fencing that was installed by volunteers. You can see that vegetation hanging out over the river. It looks diverse. There's native plants in there. This is a really happy scene. This is what we love to see. Other more active restoration projects that Streamwatch helps with is, let's say there's a very eroded stream bank. We'll team up with one of our agency partners and volunteers will go out and do stabilization projects like this one. This is a spruce tree revetment. So you can see where I'm highlighting now, those are spruce trees that were brought in. They're still covered in needles and everything. And this cable here is getting tied into the riverbank. And those spruce trees, the revetment, will slow down the water that's moving along that shoreline. They'll collect sediment. They'll provide cover for baby fish. And plants on the bank will be able to more actively take hold and provide long-term stability to that riverbank. So we work well on revetments from time to time. We help remove fish passage barriers if those are in the way of fish trying to get upriver. And we do a variety of other sort of stabilization and fish habitat production projects as well as needed. And what does this all lead to? Well, this is a happy scene. It's a family going out fishing. They're in the clean, cold water. You can see behind them this riverbank vegetation looks awesome. It looks really healthy. I think this is a great scene of coexistence of anglers and a healthy river. So this is what we strive for at Streamwatch. Okay, so let's take a close look at this photo. There's a few things. First of all, the riverbank vegetation is looking pretty good, so that's great. Here's this kind of backwater habitat, slow-moving water, probably good for smaller fish, especially along this shoreline. But what we're seeing through this very clear water is a lot of fish carcasses. Now, the first thing I'll say about fish carcasses going back into the river is that this is not necessarily a bad thing. Salmon run up the rivers from the ocean, they die after they spawn, and their remains stay in the river system, and that's actually really good. It's part of the reason that we have such productive river systems in Alaska is that these salmon are bringing nutrients from the sea. They've been out at sea eating for a couple years. They bring all that great stuff back up into the river, and it recycles back out into the environment through wildlife, through insect life, and it gets pumped back into the soil all over the place. These salmon nutrients are really helping to create this prolific biology that we have in Alaska. It's awesome. However, in some circumstances, like here at the Russian River, where you see there's this big crowd of anglers, having this much fish waste can really create problems because bears might come and try to eat that fish waste, get habituated to being around people, and that can lead to some very threatening, potentially risky encounters. And with Streamwatch, we want to see, safe, happy recreation, coexistence with wildlife. We don't want to see bears causing problems and potentially having to be killed or hazed out of an area, which commonly happens when there's a lot of conflict between bears and fishing visitors. So how do we deal with that? Well, here's one way. I don't know if you would want to do this. I don't really want to do this, but you could go out with the garbage bag and fill it up with fish waste and haul it out and throw it in the dumpster and send those fish carcasses to the landfill. Personally, I don't think that's the best way that we can deal with this solution. It is one way, and sometimes it's necessary, as in this photo with Streamwatch. If there's a giant load of fish waste that you can't deal with any other way, this might be the solution. Here's another not so amazing solution. This is right below a cleaning table in slow water. A bunch of full fish carcasses got collected, and you go in with a rake and chuck them out into the fast moving water. You can see there's some little white caps here. The water is moving very slowly in this nearshore area, and it's moving really fast out in the middle of the river. So that's another possibility. You can go and remove it after the fact, but the best solution has kind of two prongs. So first of all, cleaning tables. We always want to urge people to use cleaning tables. At all the Streamwatch fishing sites, there are cleaning tables made available, and we want people to use them. It's the best way to clean their fish. They can get the fillet and all the other goodies that they want off the fish. And then what do we want them to do? We want them to stop, chop, and throw. So once you've gotten everything you want off the fish, you cut it up into some, pint-sized pieces that you can throw, and you just throw it like a baseball out into the fast-moving current, and those smaller chunks will get carried further. They'll not get stuck in that nearshore habitat, and it's just a much more effective way to deal with fish waste, particularly at river sites. Sometimes on the coast we have a little bit of a different strategy, which we'll talk about later, but you want to encourage people to use cleaning tables and then stop, chop, and throw. And then you can avoid those situations where you're going in and bagging up fish waste or having to stand in the water and chuck half-rotten fish out into the current. Not so pleasant. Much better to educate people and use these systems that help keep those nutrients in the river system, but they don't create as many potential conflicts. All right, here's another problem. This is a monster rainbow trout from the Kenai River. This is at Centennial Park. And if you look at this briefly, it kind of looks like this fish got hooked. But that hook right here, that's on this fly, isn't actually in the fish. The fish just got completely tangled up in snags from a very high traffic fishing zone. Now, any of you who have gone fishing will know that snags happen. So it's not anyone's fault in particular that fishing line is getting snagged. It's part of the deal. But there are a lot of things that we can do to try to eliminate this issue so that wildlife aren't getting trapped and these plastics aren't making their way into the environment. This is a bird's nest, the Russian River, that has monofilament in it. So maybe this bird's nest will be around in 10,000 years. But we don't want to see monofilament making its way into the environment like this. It is plastic. We can put it in the landfill, just encourage people to take it out and throw it away, but that's not the greatest solution. So what's better than just throwing stuff in the landfill? Recycling. And that's what we do at Streamwatch. We have a fishing line recycling program. It's a super awesome part of what we do. This gentleman here, Gene Horning, is responsible for making these monotubes, we call them. And folks of all walks have been involved in this process. Many Streamwatch ambassadors have helped. Boy Scout groups, Girl Scout groups, you name it. Lots of people have helped out. Monotubes are put up at high-use fishing sites that we work at, and people can recycle fishing line right into these tubes. We collect it, and we send it to recycling facilities where they'll make it into fishing tackle or boardwalks or a number of other things. They also make great robot arms, so if you need a costume at any point, monotube might be the solution. So here's a monotube in action. It's out on a fishing site, and there's a sign on it that tells people what it is, where this fishing line goes, and they can put it in there if they get a big tangle or they're just done with their line. It's a great thing. They just throw it right in. It's on site, so it's super easy to prevent line from ending up in the river or elsewhere. And then we take that line, we clean it, we pick out the monofilament. We're just recycling monofilament through this program. and we cut off all the tackle, which we actually hand out to anglers on the river as kind of tokens of our gratitude for them working with us on stewardship. And it's a really great program. It kind of brings things full circle, as recycling should. So those are all ways that we participate in restoration and stewardship. A little bit of education in there as well, which is the next topic. I want to talk about explicit educational things that Streamwatch volunteers participate in. So one big part of our education is that we go to festivals, we go to Wednesday markets in Soldotna. Wherever we can, we go, we set up booths, and we talk to people about river stewardship and restoration and the things that we do so that they can also participate. Education is a huge part of Streamwatch because there's only so many Streamwatch ambassadors, but everyone can be a salmon steward, can be a part of this effort to keep salmon rivers healthy on the Kenai Peninsula for future generations. And so when we educate people, we're sort of paying forward this mission of caring for this region. Here's the Kenai DipNet booth. So we do this at the DipNet fishery, as well as at these high-use recreational fishing sites on the river. Here's a booth set up at the Russian River. Folks here are cleaning some line while waiting for visitors to pass by, and they'll talk to them about the very things I've talked to you about during this presentation. Using boardwalks, using proper river access. Why is it so important? How does the salmon life cycle work, and how can we support it as we visit these amazing sites? So it's a great part of the program. You can find yourself in any location on the river and help provide educational messaging to visitors there. That's one of the beautiful things about Streamwatch is that it's very flexible. You can really do it anytime you're out on the river, and it makes a big difference. I mentioned that domino effect at the start, and that's really kind of what we do. We lead by example, and we try to provide a positive outlook for people to become involved in this great movement of trying to keep our salmon rivers as intact and pristine as possible. So why Streamwatch? Well, we're a group of active citizens who protect salmon rivers on the Kenai Peninsula by doing hands-on restoration and stewardship projects and by providing peer-to-peer education to fellow visitors at high-use fishing sites. That's it in a nutshell. We're going to talk about all kinds of other things through this training, but I hope that provides a pretty good big picture overview of why Streamwatch exists, and I hope it's compelling. Really looking forward to the rest of the training and getting out with you all. Thank you.